Hey guys, and welcome back to EQ Planes, and today I'll be flying the Air Canada 787-9 from Toronto to Calgary. Now, the Air Canada 787 is an aircraft I have a bit of a history with having flown it 3 times prior to this trip. In fact, I even have an old trip report on it, but I highly suggest you don't go and watch that. Now, anybody who knows me knows that I have nothing good to say about the Air Canada 787 most of the time, as I've always found their economy seats to be poorly made. But I figure with having brought up how much I dislike the Air Canada 787 in several videos, I figured it's only fair to give it a second shot. Now, let's start out with a somewhat rocky experience on the ground in Toronto. The airport was fairly busy that day, however, I don't mind as it shows that air travel has been recovering well. Another thing is that Air Canada does tend to check your carry-ons before going through security to make sure that they are the proper size and seem to be fairly strict with it. In Toronto, as a bag we had used as a carry-on 4 or 5 prior other flights was unacceptable to the people in Toronto. So just a heads up, you got to make sure that carry-on's the right size if you fly with Air Canada through Toronto. Now, without further ado, here's our Air Canada 787 we'll be flying today. This 787 is 5 years old and was built at the Everett plant in Seattle. This aircraft is registered Charlie Foxtrot Romeo Tango Whiskey. Now, after a delayed boarding, let's check out the Air Canada 787-9 and see if it really deserves all the flack I've given it over the years. Now, Air Canada 787-9 seat 30 people in business class in a 1x2x1 configuration, 21 people in premium economy in a 2x3x2 configuration, and finally 247 people in economy in a 3x3 configuration. Now, here's my seat for today in economy, seat 22A. When it comes to my first impressions of the cabin, you definitely notice the features that generally make the 787 a great aircraft to fly on, like the high ceilings, large overhead bins, and massive windows. However, something I also noticed was the lack of cleanliness of the aircraft, including hair and mustard stains which were covering my seat, which was kind of gross, but that's more Air Canada's fault, not really the Dreamliner's. Out the window here, you can see the Air Canada 777-300ER, which is the aircraft we had originally booked this flight on, but it was switched out for the Dreamliner, which is unfortunate as I've never flown the 777 before, but I'll get a chance at some point. Now, after sitting on the ground for roughly an hour and a bit of a delayed taxi time, enjoy this taxi and takeoff from Toronto Pearson, and I'll get into more details about the seat when we're in the air. Let's start taking a closer look at the seat, starting with the back pocket where you have your standard Air Canada 787-9 safety card, along with a couple air sickness bags. Now when it comes to the tray table, recline, and legroom, the Air Canada 787 isn't bad. However, the seat padding is definitely a place where it struggles. The seats are noticeably thinner compared to other seats in the Air Canada fleet, like the seats on their A330s, which are similar to these ones but definitely not the same, especially when it comes to the back of the seat, which definitely becomes uncomfortable after a while. However, I must say this Air Canada 787 IFE is definitely a big win. It is definitely responsive and way better than what you would have gotten on a 767 back in the day. However, the seat padding certainly takes a lot away from the aircraft. Now, when it comes to the 787 as an aircraft, there are definitely things I enjoy about it, like the massive windows make good recording, and the engines are definitely a lot quieter than other aircraft. However, I must say I'm not a fan of the tinted windows, as when it comes to recording, the windows are always a little bit tinted, meaning that you don't really get the true color out of the images. Another thing I noticed was just how much the wings were chipping and how much cover-up work had been done on them. Now, paint chipping off the wings of the 787 is definitely a known issue by Boeing, and other airlines have the same problem. However, this particular one seems to have had a lot of paint come off its wings, as you notice there is a ton of patchwork on it. Now, when it comes to the lavatories, they're not bad, pretty spacious. Cleanliness could be better, however, this is definitely much better than something you would get on a 737. They did also come around with a small drink service. But without further ado, enjoy this landing into Calgary YYC, and stick around for my final thoughts on the aircraft.
Aircraft, please check to ensure you have all of your electronic devices. If you have a typing flight, please refer to the screen.
Now, when it comes to my final thoughts on the Air Canada 787, is that the aircraft isn't bad in many of the aspects except for the seat padding. The fact is, this could be an aircraft with a very good product on board, much like the Air Canada A330. However, with that lack of padding, it can certainly be an uncomfortable aircraft to be in for long periods of time. All the bells and whistles, including the IFE and large bins and windows, are nice, but when it comes to what makes an aircraft seat good, it's definitely the padding, in my opinion. I've sat in more comfortable seats on Air Canada's CRJ900, and when you can compare a regional product with an international product, there's definitely an issue. If you have the choice between this and another aircraft, I definitely take that other aircraft. However, it should be bearable for most flights. Anyways, thank you guys for watching, and hope to see you guys back next time.